Welcome to part 10 of the Clash of Worlds. Now we're going to talk about Robert de La Salle. René-Robert Cavelier, Sieur de La Salle, in the grand scheme of things, probably should not be very historically important, at least when you take a look at French explorers, because he's so late to come into the picture, right? By the time that de La Salle had arrived, he had already been preceded by people like Pierre-Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet. The headwaters of the Mississippi River had already been found in 1673, right? And so the Mississippi River is mapped, the Great Lakes are mapped. I mean, what the heck can this guy actually do? Well, what he can do is he can decide in 1682 to sail down the Mississippi River. And that's exactly what he's going to do. From its headwaters, he's going to begin working all the way down the Mississippi River. And as he's doing this, he's going to begin claiming land. He's going to do a little, whatever rite or ceremony is necessary. I'm claiming these lands and all the lands that these rivers touch in the name of France, right? But he's taken it one step further, and this is one thing that makes him important. He says, I claim these lands and any lands that this river touches, and any lands that any river that feeds into this river touches, in the name of France. So when he claimed the lands around the Mississippi River as French territory, he also claimed all the lands around the Arkansas River, the Missouri River, the Ohio River. Have you ever wondered why the Louisiana Purchase territory looks so weird that it just spreads out and gets wider and wider as you go north? Well, that's the reason why. It's basically the La Salle claim, right? So he sails to the mouth of the Mississippi River, and then he continues on and he goes to France, where he tells the king, King Louis XIV, the Sun King. Louis XIV, he says, I have claimed all this land in the name of you, and of course I've named it Louisiana because you're so awesome, and I'm going to name this after you. And we're going to see this repeated a lot, right? These kind of things, naming conventions. We'll see a lot of this, okay? So Louis XIV, in 1683, gives Robert de La Salle a charter to colonize the mouth of the Mississippi River, right? You know, here La Salle's been sticking the sword in the sand and claiming land. Well, you can stick your sword in the sand, but if you can't protect it, you can't keep it. So he says, you need to protect the mouth of that river. So, in 1684, on August 1st, Robert de La Salle is going to leave La Rochelle, France, with 300 colonists. His intent is to sail to the Americas, sail to the mouth of the Mississippi River, and establish a colony right there at the mouth, effectively establishing New Orleans. That's what New Orleans, which will be established later, effectively does, right? Now, to be fair, he is not going to establish New Orleans because some things are going to go terribly wrong. Now, first of all, he doesn't go straight to the Mississippi River when he arrives. By the time he's crossed the ocean and has arrived in the Caribbean, he is deathly ill, and so he makes landfall on French-controlled territory on the island of Hispaniola, so he can convalesce and he can heal and get his strength back up. While he's doing that, he's going to lose some of his crew to desertion and some of them to VD, right? They finally leave in the beginning of February of 1685 to establish their colony, right? They leave from Hispaniola, though, and totally miss the mouth of the Mississippi River. I mean, by a long shot, by 400 miles to the west. They make landfall at Matagorda Bay in modern-day Texas. That's why I refer to Robert de La Salle as the second accidental tourist in Texas. Now, when he lands there, he says, we're close. We're really close. This creek here, Garcitas Creek, this is probably part of the delta. And if we just go one direction or another, we'll find the Mississippi itself. So he's absolutely convinced we are close to the Mississippi River. He's not close to the Mississippi River. And so in January of 1686, he's going to take an expedition, a small party of men, and he's going to go west to try and find the Mississippi River, which is not the right direction to go. Now, what he will find is he will find two things. He'll find the Rio Grande River, and he'll find definite proof that he's going the wrong way, right? So he knows now that the Mississippi River is to the east, and he thinks still not too far, right? So in April of 1686, he makes an attempt, his first attempt at trying to find the Mississippi to the east. And at this point, he's trying to find it so he can just get everybody home. He's ready to get out of there. He says, we're going to go east, we're going to find the Mississippi River, and we're going to trek up it until we get back to French-held territory. Effectively, what he's saying is that, guys, we're going to go east, find the Mississippi River, and walk to Canada. Take a look at the map. Look where he's at. Take a look where Canada's at. Yeah, that is a heck of an ask, right? Meanwhile, the whole time back there in their encampment, they're suffering from Indian raids, all kinds of issues, right? It's a very hostile environment they're in. This first attempt in April of 1868 is a disaster. Of the 20 men they sent on this surveying trip, only 8 of them survived, right? They only got as far as the territory between the Sabine and Trinity rivers, right? One of the servants was even eaten by an alligator on this expedition, okay? By January of 1687, there's only 41 people of the 200 initial settlers left alive. And at this point, everybody's like, had it. So La Salle takes the remaining 17 most fit people in that party and begins a second expedition to try and walk to Canada. We're going to go east, we're going to find the Mississippi, we're going to go up and find Canada. And again, he'll never see the Mississippi River again. Matter of fact, he'll be killed by one of the members of his own party, a very disgruntled member of the party by the name of Pierre Duhot. Will finally, on March 19th, 1687, decide he's had enough. He's going to ambush and kill Robert de La Salle. And of that group of 17 men, only 5 of them will make it back to French-held territory, Fort St. Louis, where modern-day St. Louis is, right? And that's how we know the tale of what happened. As far as the settlers that remained behind, well, they will survive amazingly for another 2 years, but around Christmas of 1688, you're going to have Karankawas attack the village, pretty much killing most of them, and then when an expedition is sent by the Spanish to try and find these Frenchmen on their territory, a couple years later, all they find is an abandoned site. So the Spanish and the French have set the stage that others will follow, right? They're not the only ones that are going to get involved in exploring these new territories to the west. For example, the Swedish will set up a colony. They'll create on the Delaware River in North America in 1638, a place that they'll call New Sweden, right? It'll last for a little while, but it'll actually be destroyed by another latecomer, the Dutch. The Dutch established a colony of New Amsterdam, or New Netherlands rather, on the Hudson River in the city of New Amsterdam in 1614. And when they heard about the Swedish colony on the Delaware River nearby, they'll actually go and attack it and destroy it. Now, New Netherlands and New Amsterdam today are called by a different name. Today they're called New York City and New York State, but we'll get back to that later. So you'll have Dutch settlement, we'll have Swedish settlement. You'll also have the Russians get involved, but from the other direction. They'll begin claiming territories on the west coast of North America, including places like Alaska, and even have a claim on Oregon territory that will persist until 1825. And then finally, of course, England. England's going to get involved in the colony building game as well, and that might be important. Matter of fact, I think that might be important enough that it probably deserves its own lecture.